And I think that's so interesting because almost every American will quote that at some point in their lives. If you build it, they will come. But that concept is completely wrong. And
Hi everyone. Today I am hosting Jennifer Tsitsopoulos. If I am correct, Jenny is my friend from United States. She is joining us from New York. I met with Jenny in 2019 June in one of the trainings. I was her trainee and benefited from her experiences. Thanks for coming. Could you please tell us who you are, what you do, for which company?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited and honored to be on here. Like you said, Murat, I'm dialing in from Brooklyn, New York. So over in the United States of America. I consider myself a little bit of a hybrid, which is obviously why I'm so excited to be Zoom with you today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Boston native, so for anybody listening, I'll have to say go Red Sox. I was fortunate to spend a lot of my career in Australia, so have also lived on the other side of the world, now working for a Belgium-based company, but working out of New York. I've ultimately married into the Greek faith, so I really consider myself a citizen of the world. A little bit about myself. So I currently am a founding member of Board of Innovation's New York office, where I help big companies to build better businesses. And that might be through innovation strategy, through business modeling, or through capability design and coaching like you and I have experienced together.
I had a chance to experience Board of Innovation services. You are helping Fortune 500 companies. Could you please give some more examples about what Board of Innovations does? I believe most of our colleagues in LinkedIn, especially doing the similar type of businesses like me, would be very interested on your services.
Yeah, Board of Innovation's a fantastic company. I actually really admire the fact that it's Belgium-based. It gives this an authenticity and an agileness that we just don't often see in the US, my own country, so I can make a little bit of a poke there. The company was actually founded over 10 years ago on the premise that you can actually prototype and ideate business models before just going ahead and putting that on paper. And as you know, and as we both know, anyone listening, business model innovation has taken off in the past decade or so. So over 10 years time, the company has actually expanded from being this Belgium business model firm to innovation strategy, capability design and coaching. We actually help big companies launch better products very quickly into the market. And we now have offices in New York City, in Belgium, Amsterdam, some offices in Latin America. And we actually opened up an office in Singapore during the pandemic.
So about your career, how you decided to be senior business designer?
So I started my career in advertising. So I didn't actually start off in innovation or even in VC. Most of my colleagues are actually all ex-startup owners. So everybody that works at Board of Innovation has launched their own businesses before. I come from a slightly different angle, which was really all about understanding how do you convince consumers, understanding consumers and how do you convince them to engage or consume a product for our big clients. So when I started my career, I was actually in Boston, and then I had the opportunity to go to Australia to launch Carnival Cruise Lines. So it was fascinating. Packed up my bag, moved to the
other part of the world. Fantastic.
Yeah. And launching a brand into a new market really kicked me off onto this stream of understanding of how do I really start to create more of a tangible impact. So not just the ads you see on TV, but how do I actually create change in the world? And that got me thinking about innovation. And before Board of Innovation opportunity arose, I actually was at an insight and foresight company called Sparks and Honey. Fascinating experience that I think made me who I am to an extent, because the company had this unique operating model where every single day the whole company and over 100 external guests would come together to debate how the world had changed in the last 24 hours, and then use that to identify future opportunities that would lead to innovation for our clients. So I really learned about long-term innovation.
You cannot pass this part that much quickly. So it is really a crazy business model, I would say. You said all of the employees of the company, maybe hundreds, get together every day. How was it happening? Whoa, it is interesting. I never heard that one. Could you please elaborate more?
Sparks and Honey was definitely a dream job. So the fact that they met daily as a whole organization plus external guests, and guests could be anything from the US government to organizational leads from pharmaceutical brands to the head of L'Oreal, whoever it might have been, getting these different minds together in a room to debate change. And the whole premise was by debating culture over time, you could start to identify emerging behaviors as they were happening. So the company basically met together in person, or right now, because of the pandemic, they're live streaming it. So for anybody interested, definitely check them out. They live stream to LinkedIn at 12 p.m. every day, Eastern time. And you can get a sense for the conversations that are happening. I truly believe that when you look at the world and change, it's really, really hard to do at once. But if you do it on a daily rhythm and you create these habits, slowly you start to see how culture in the world itself is changing. So that really led me to this idea of understanding innovation opportunity spaces for my client. But unfortunately, that was really future tense. I was looking at things that were happening that might have an impact on companies like PepsiCo in the next 10 years. And when Board of Innovation came around with the opportunity to open up a New York office, when Board of Innovation opportunity came around with the opportunity to actually launch their New York office, I really jumped on that because that allowed me to create more tangible impact. So instead of just thinking about what's happening in the next 10 years, I could really create change in the next 6 months. And that's kind of really what led me here today.
So I don't know if you heard about this Factfulness book by Hans Rosling. Your example reminded me this book. In this book, Hans Rosling mentions that all the knowledge that we have been taught when we were in university has changed. But we have the same outlook to the world. We think that the world is same, and we are taking the decisions based on the knowledge that we had maybe 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Even the top leaders in the companies still think that the world is separated into two pieces, develop and undeveloped. No, it's not like this. It is not just understanding, you are actually helping them to change, to drive the change based on the needs or based on the future needs maybe, not even the current needs. That's a fantastic job, dream job.
I love that because you've really articulated it perfectly. I don't know if you want a job, Maria, at our company. Perfect pitch. There is this thing around, I'm sure you're speaking to a lot of innovation consultants and strategists, and any practitioner tells you about starting with the consumer. But my background with a little bit of foresight brings together the need to start with the consumer and the customer, but also the world. So no longer can we just look at how the customer needs are. We have to put that in context to how the world is changing. And as innovation teams within corporate environments, it's often that we'll look at a project and we create a brief up front, and that brief never changes, although the world itself may have changed over time. So I really try to coach people to have more of a loose thinking or flexibility to where they brief a project and insert some of that cultural relevance or the change of the world and the context throughout the entire process.
What are the fun facts and difficulties of your job?
I would have to say is this idea of innovation theater. I don't know if you've heard of it yet.
I first time heard it from you. I heard the success theater term, but I really like the innovation theater. What you are going to explain, it makes total sense.
Yeah, so the idea of innovation theater is really, it's becoming a buzzword, right? When I say to you innovation, or anybody listening to this call, everyone has their own preconceived notions around what that means and how to do it. And with more people jumping on the term, there is a concern within the industry that what we actually do as innovators might be jeopardized to an extent. And what I mean by innovation theater are things like a whole room full of sticky notes, everything being an accelerator. And then once you leave those daily workshops, you feel great, but nothing ever happens. Exactly. So as innovation strategists, if things are not being actioned afterwards, our whole industry could be in jeopardy. And so a fun fact about Board of Innovation is that internally, we might even debate changing our name so that that connotation around innovation is no longer there. In terms of Board of Innovation itself, I think I signed up personally because I thought I was working for this really efficient Belgium, maybe even German company. When I joined, I was so excited to hear that they had this new way of working. So the organization is set up in these self-steering circles. So you're in teams about 8 or 10 across the whole organization, around 50 people, excuse me. And those 8 or 10 person teams make all of their own organizational and operational decisions. We hire as a team, we fire as a team. We then pitch to our founding members once a month, and almost like a steering committee on the decisions we're making. But otherwise, we're completely functioning.
I'm very curious on understanding what contributes to your character.
Podcast or the Zoom call is really about faces from different places. And I know I made a joke earlier today that I consider myself a global citizen, and sure, maybe many Americans would say that, but transformational to me, which has led me to the character and my openness to change, was packing up all alone and moving over to Australia. So that really shaped me as an individual. The idea of just not knowing somebody in a new country, having to make new friends, having to go to dinner alone. I could recommend it to anybody. I would never look back on that. Growing up in a small town of Boston, we didn't even want to travel to New York City, and that was 4 hours away. And so that American mindset, so this is pretty random. I don't know, are you familiar with the Chipmunks? So Simon,
Yes.
Alvin, and Theodore?
Yes, my children follow.
So, yeah, over 10 years ago, back in 2011, I was able to actually film Chipwreck 3 aboard a Carnival cruise ship. And that was with Fox Studios. So we had about 175 different crew members filming a live film. And I've never experienced anything like that. I've never experienced anything like that since. And it's definitely one of those things I'll never forget.
It's in my watch list. I remember our 5 days of training, and I was really impressed on the speed of your work. And it is not a compliment, it is the fact. Do you have a routine that you follow in daily work?
Oh, I struggle with this. I don't know if you can tell just even from this video call, anything that's routine, I struggle with. I think that's why I got into this industry.
Yes.
Per your example, everything I do is different every day. I have a set of rules I might follow, and I know I have my own mental toolkit that I can apply, but every day is different. I've never in my life worked on the same project twice. And as innovators, we encourage agileness and flexibility. So at any point, I might change my direction completely. So I think this idea of ritual and routine is so very important, and something I personally struggle with. Somebody mentioned to me just 2 weeks ago, the Pomodoro Method. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
No, never.
It's a productivity technique that basically you can set up on your computer, and it's a 25-minute timer, and it encourages you to focus for 25-minute increments. So mini sprints within a sprint potentially.
Makes sense. There are watches in the kitchen, the Pomodoro shape, the tomato shape, right?
Exactly.
So you can set the timer. I think, okay, got it.
Exactly. I think that must be where it comes from. Otherwise, I really enjoy chaos. And I don't know if you can tell, I'm somebody that almost thrives in the chaos, which means that my life can itself be quite chaotic.
Very interesting, actually. There are some key takeaways for myself. First, the Pomodoro Method. I really like it. And I remember early in my career, there was a CIO who was giving the appointments for only 15 minutes. So if you ask for a meeting, you could only get 15 minutes. But if you need more, you get 2 15 minutes. So meaning that 30 minutes, and not more. You mentioned that you need first book 25 minutes work and give a break, and then 25 minutes. I agree. Because we are very distracted and we cannot concentrate things on more than 25 minutes. Secondly, about routine. So some people doesn't like to repeat the same things.
I actually, Murat, I'm one of those people that walks a different way to home and to work every single day. So you can see that routine is something I definitely struggle with, but it's something that I admire in other people for sure.
Yeah, same for me.
I have tons of passions, and they live and die as quickly as they come up. I had a really strange passion for cookbooks, and I've bought hundreds of cookbooks, and I can't cook at all. I take on these passions, and I get really interested in them, and then I kind of move on to the next. So if I'm passionate about anything, it might be about constant change, which I think fits into your question about ritual and routine as well. For example, AI and data. That is almost a secret weapon for strategists or consultants to help enable us to do better innovation, as opposed to doing the innovation itself. So I'm a big believer that humans and empathy will still play a role no matter how many innovations come in, but that the innovations and technologies can actually democratize what it means to be a corporate innovator today. And democratizing innovation really means more people can do it. So I follow a lot of patent news. If anyone that's interested in understanding where the world's going, a good place to start is understanding the patents being filed today. Fascinating to see what some big companies are doing. And one of my daily newsletters that I received talked about Visa and how they were actually investing in an AI prediction platform to really understand and collect data of change to understand where the world might be going next. So when I think about innovation, I really, really am excited about companies or technologies that are compiling all of the noise and creating some sort of structure with it so that us as humans can take action.
I read from one of your LinkedIn posts about the deceleration, slowing down of the innovation. Could you please enlighten us about, because I really like the terminology.
I think part of creating real impact is actually slowing down rather than speeding up. So a lot of our clients come to us looking for an accelerator or for the five-day sprint answer. And I think given the craziness that we all face in today's world, that there's an opportunity to actually decelerate and slow down, do a little bit more of perception building up front. So this is really about stretching the opportunity space, some of that long-term thinking to make sure we're solving for the right problem, to slow down, create almost these ongoing habits. So bringing in a little bit about that daily debate and to bring those two things together to create actual impact in the world. So I talk a lot about this idea of slow innovation. It's actually an emerging concept. So if anyone's interested, you can do a bit of searching. I grew up in a really mixed household with a Dominican mother, a Jewish father, one Republican, one Democratic. And I've always seen America as this mixture, this melting pot of cultures. And so to see the shift that's happening, a rise in nationalism, I'm pretty disappointed at the moment, but know that we can get back to really what makes America great. I absolutely love being in New York City. I think it's a love-hate for anyone that's ever visited. This high-paced world that we're living in, there's always something going on outside of my window. I think I wake up 5 times to a fire truck in the middle of the night. But that means there's always something to do and see. So much culture to learn, so many people to get to know just on the street. So I did love living on the other side of the world in Sydney, but I can't imagine living anywhere else besides New York at this point.
Besides your mother and father's diversification, also you had bigger diversification with your marriage. She's married with an Orthodox Greek, which is our lovely neighbors.
Yes, Yaltas to my Greek fellow Greeks out there. It's an amazing culture. So I married and I became a Tsitsopoulos, which I've been told I'm actually pronouncing my own name wrong. But my maiden name was actually longer. So my maiden name was Shabshelowitz, which was 1 letter longer. And I really never imagined to have met somebody from another country. And I'm really, really enjoying the kind of clashing of cultures. I would say it's definitely work. We come from really 2 different backgrounds and 2 different family structures, and we're constantly figure out how to bring those 2 together. But in the Greek culture, you have very strong women, and so I think I hold my own in that regard. Ideas that come from innovation are disruptive, and you should feel uncomfortable. We talk about this concept of the groan zone. If your team is all agreeing on something, then it's not innovative enough, and you should feel upset, and you should feel frustrated. And this idea of frustration has not come through in the American corporate world. So I see too much about prioritizing brainstorming where everyone should be on the same page at all times versus this idea of disruptive thinking and actually making it okay to argue in a positive way with your fellow colleagues.
By the way, I always keep, this is my reference book.
And I think it comes back to what you were mentioning. It comes back to this incentive culture where corporations have incentivized you to hit quarterly goals, maybe even annual goals, but no one is being promoted for thinking about 5 years out and maybe creating an innovation that will put us in the red for the short term. So I'm really, really interested in incentivizing corporate structures. And I'm also really interested in new forms of governance. So I think governance from an innovation standpoint has been designed to stem innovation almost. It means that people top down are making decisions when they don't actually have all the answers to make those decisions. So ultimately they go with things that are comfortable with them, things that they're familiar with, which means those ideas that make us uncomfortable always get left off the table. So I think there's an opportunity to really rethink corporate governance in a way to fuel innovation in the long term, but also to drive short-term goals, because I know in reality, that's what needs to happen. Fortunately, most of our jesters have made it into sitcoms and movies around the world. So I think first there's the fist pump instead of the handshake. I don't know if you want to give me a virtual fist pump.
And and this became traditional global because of the corona. Nobody handshakes now. Everyone do this one.
Oh, are you fist pumping? Okay, so as corona, we're actually elbow wagging now in the US.
Really?
So we're giving a little bit of an elbow rub.
Do that one, yes. Or we are going to do this one like Japanese, so you don't know.
Oh, that's brilliant. The Japanese are definitely onto something. I think that the handshake won't come back in the US anytime soon. I think I've really gotten used to not shaking hands, which was something that we were raised on. You were even taught how to give a good handshake in business school. I'm currently studying for a master's in foresight. So like I mentioned before, the idea of scenario planning for business, right? How do we understand what future scenarios might be and then create action strategies for today? And I use that to apply it to my methods of slow innovation and deceleration. Yeah, I was recently listening to Bob Iger's book. So I did a road trip during the pandemic. I actually drove down to the South. I've never driven that far, from Boston to Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
And so we needed something to do in the car, and we listened to Bob Iger, the ex-Disney CEO's autobiography called The Ride of a Lifetime. And just so impressed by somebody like that can accomplish in so short of a career span. He's still young enough, and he's accomplished so much. And I was also really, really inspired by his drive, but also with empathy. So growing up in the industry, especially from the US perspective, the idea of being an empathetic leader is not always connected to business results. And I think Bob Iger and his story really tells you that the two can be connected. You can be good and do good work. So definitely read. He's also doing a masterclass, which is another program I subscribe to, just in case I want to learn cooking and other skills outside of business.
I have a book from Michael Eisner. I think Michael Eisner was the ex-CEO of Disney before Bob Iger.
They basically position themselves to monetize imagination. So another book I would highly recommend is Anti-Fragile. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
This concept of anti-fragility is the idea of things that gain from disorder. So you're doing a bit of foresight right there. You're doing a little bit of scenario planning to think and ask the what if of what if could happen. I would challenge you that you could also think about the positives though. So what are the things that are going to help you to move and get into a good result? So I love that you're doing pre-mortems. I think it's one of my favorite things, and it also involves raising our assumptions. So what do we believe to be true and we don't actually know for sure? I think it's the best thing that an innovation team can be doing. So kudos to doing it already.
Thank you.
What is your local proverb? I was wondering, because I think mine's a bit
good question.
American.
I have many. Nelson Mandela's famous quotes, I never fail. I either learn or win.
I like them. They can both be applied to innovation, both of those. I guess mine's of a similar vein. So I was thinking about something quintessentially American, and I went to this place of what's more American than baseball, besides, the hamburger. And I don't know if you ever watched that movie from the 80s, Field of Dreams. And they say, James Earl Jones, if you build it, they will come. And I think that's so interesting because almost every American will quote that at some point in their lives. If you build it, they will come. But that concept is completely wrong. And as an innovator, I try to encourage, you need to actually do more than just build something for them to come. And so I actually think of that proverb as something not to do. And so I use it in its complete opposite form. And I hope to encourage customers and to clients and to any innovation practitioner to build something with purpose, with a customer in mind, with the context in mind, with an actual need, and then to apply some marketing strategy to actually drive people to it. So this idea of if they build it, they will come, I think we've actually proven false in the recent decades. And
so, Jenny, we are getting at the end of the very lovely conversation, and I really love the way but maybe you can use some Boston accents and maybe some Greek language sharing with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Murad, and just allowing me to share my many thoughts on innovation, on myself, and on where I see the industry going. Really enjoyed the conversation. So I'll just say a quick, see you later, from Boston, and Kalispera for all my Greeks, meaning good afternoon to those watching.
And I
Thank
think it is morning, so I have to say Kalimera if it is good morning.
Bravo. I'm working on the Greek. Next time we chat, it'll be much better.
It's an honor for me to host you in Faces from Places session. Thanks a lot, Jenny. I wish you a happy, healthy 2021.